Hey, what's up, Vox and Hops? I'm Matt, the vocals of Crips, and you listen to my podcast, Vox and Hops, where I sit down with fellow men and musicians to talk about their lives, music, and craft beer. I hope that you've had a great week. Sadly, this marks the final Spotlight on Redefining Darkness Records episode. I love this record label. You should love this record label. They have actually set up a promo code for all of the Vox and Hops listeners on their Bandcamp page when you are buying some vinyls, CDs, and cassettes. And when you are checking out, make sure to use that promo code Vox and Hops. That's VOX ampersand HOPS. You should do it. It's an absolutely amazing record label. And they have a whole bunch of amazing bands that deserve your attention. Because this is a Spotlight on Redefining Darkness Records episode, I have the pleasure of playing one of their artists, and this week I get to play Anger Rot, and the track is Coalesced with Wickedness, taken from their album, The Divine Apostate. It is absolutely insane. Make sure that you enjoy it by turning up to 11. Here it is, Coalesced with Wickedness. was fucking brutal. I loved it to death. Make sure that you go and support Anger Rot. Check out the links that I have put in the description of this podcast. Support extreme music. It is super important. Today's episode is a special episode because not only is it a spotlight on Redefining Darkness Records episode, I had the pleasure of chatting with the man behind Redefining Darkness Records, Thomas Haywood. He's amazing. Here it is, Vox&Hops episode number 151.
I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Today I'm with Thomas Haywood, the man behind Redefining Darkness Records. He has toured with Abigail Williams. He plays in Grave Plague. It is great to be with you. I am stoked to do this because right now we are actually doing a spotlight on Redefining Darkness Records, segmented as a month where I play an artist from a label. This month it is Redefining Darkness, so I love to sit down with the record executive to talk more in depth about the label, what your mindset is, how you guys pick bands. But let's start off nice and smooth and say, how are you?
Oh, hey, thank you. Yeah, I'm well. The night's winding down, and this is a great time to have a little chat with a little beverage, and a friend. So, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course, yes, and I am thirsty. So normally I wait till a little bit later, but it's been a long day.
It has, yeah. I've already started. So,
Vox&Hops is all about hanging out with my metal friends and talking about their lives, music, and craft beer. So what are you drinking on your side? Because we can't share the same beer, sadly.
Right. Yeah, so I cheated a little bit today. So my whole intention was to stop at the store on the way home and grab something, as interesting as I could find. And that just didn't happen today. So I do have, and this is not so crafty, but I found that, and I don't know if you know this about me, but I actually worked in the beverage industry, and specifically the beer industry. I worked since 2014 maybe. I worked for a distributor for a minute, literally for a couple months. I got picked up by a brewery distillery out of Kentucky, but I was like a rep for them in the Cleveland area. And then from there, I stayed in craft spirits. From then until just last year, I just kind of exited the spirit realm, if you would. So I'm going to stretch your show into craft beer and spirits. So this is actually a company that I had worked for out of Columbus, Ohio. The company is Middle West Spirits, and this is their Michelone Reserve straight bourbon. But to say this is like 5.5 years aged right now. This is probably the best bourbon coming from Ohio at the moment, and I made myself a hot toddy because it's just been one of those days. I just need something. It's been rainy and shitty out and chilly, for this time of year, so needed to kind of dry off and warm up, and it's perfect.
That sounds awesome, and I believe, I could be wrong, correct me in the comments, everyone, I think this is the first time someone's drinking hard liquor on Vox&Hops.
Oh, nice. Yeah, there had to be someone. We're metal guys, we're rebels, man. They go against the grain, break the rules.
For me, here in Montreal, it is the complete opposite. It was really hot today, and I was working outside doing a whole bunch of yard work for my early childhood educator establishment where I work, and I'm drinking a Bébé Mandrill from MaBrasserie.
That's cool.
Which is their session version of their Mandrill. Huge shout out to Gael and the rest of the MaBrasserie crew for hooking me up with some brews to share during my podcast chats. This clocks in at 4.1. It's a Grisette, and I'm very excited to drink it because I'm thirsty. So let's touch on working for craft beer in the craft beer industry.
Sure.
Were you already a craft beer nerd when you got into that, or did you become more of one due to that?
I was, and you may know this from touring around and trying to discover new beers. I guess I don't know when that all started for you, but I probably started really getting into craft beer around the time I was in Abigail Williams, actually, which was like 07 to 09. So probably 2006, 2007. I was working for a restaurant at the time, part-time, and they were really ahead of the curve with craft beer, at least where I'm from in Cleveland. And so we had, that back then it was almost unheard of to have like 30, 40 tap handles. And, there was only so many craft breweries in the United States. And so, Stone, obviously Dogfish Head, were kind of some of the big beginning partners. And it was cool because we were such a big account for them that a lot of these guys showed up, and like I got to meet Greg and I got to meet Sam from Dogfish, and, like I got cool experiences out of that. And the restaurant I worked for is called Melt. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's been on the Food Network and a lot of travel shows, and I think Man vs. Food back in the day when that was a thing. Because we had these, like, essentially it was a gourmet grilled cheese sandwich place, like a big comfort food place, but they would make these really obnoxious size sandwiches, and so people would like challenge themselves to eat these monstrosities. But so they got a lot of press. It's kind of like died down over the last probably 5 years, but when they launched in like 2005 or 2006 maybe, and it was like lines out the door. It was just really crazy. So I started working for them, and so that kind of opened my eyes. And there was another place, there was a recording studio that my friend owned, and we just would record projects there. I was working on a band called System Divide, which was on Metal Blade with Sven from Aborted, and I was writing at the time with them. So I was in Abigail Williams, and we would be touring, obviously, and we would come home. And during that home period, I was getting together with my friend Cole at his studio. He was a part of the project as well. And we would just write together. And so we were writing the majority of the material at that time. And then because I was in Abigail Williams, I'd have to go back on the road. And they wanted someone a little more dedicated. And I was like, it's totally fine. If you guys want to make this a real band and be on the road, I understand. Like, find someone that's dedicated. And I'm still in Abigail, so it is what it is, So there was a place right across the street from the studio. It was really cool. It was called Buckeye Beer Engine. And they were way ahead on craft beer and beer imports. So, and all the guys were knowledgeable. And so they would kind of like have us try things. And, Belgian beer was a big thing for us then. And at the time we had gotten into some mead. So Vikings Blood, was something we were drinking by the bottle back then. And it was pretty early on, man. So at least for where I'm from. So it was pretty cool. And Le Fin du Mot, obviously, if you're familiar. And so we got a lot of that stuff back then, and, just kind of got indoctrinated pretty early. So
that's a very beautiful life experience that you got to be exposed so early.
Yeah.
This Grisette is absolutely amazing. Exactly what I needed today. It is super drinkable.
Nice, refreshing. Yeah.
Exactly what I needed right now. So huge shout out and cheers.
Is it smoky at all? Because aren't Grisettes tend to be?
Not this one though. No, this was nice and smooth, drinkable. I picture myself being a farmer after a hard day's work, which is how I feel today. And I can go through a few of these. That's really very interesting. That whole time that you're with Abigail too, I think was when Samus was on drums.
He was. So I joined before we got Sam, and Zach Gibson was in the band with us, who was obviously on Miasma, Black Dahlia Murder, and he went on to tour with Phobia and some other bands here and there. But he had like a good job that he liked, and he struggled, just like a lot of us struggle, like with being on the road and stuff. He just had that back and forth push pull. Like he loved being out, then he would hate being out, and he didn't want to lose his job. And so he's actually still at that job, man. So there's a testament to him sticking true to that. I mean, it worked out for him. But it was sad to see him go, and then, we had to find a replacement. It was funny because not a lot of people know this, but when I had joined forces with Ken, who I'm referring to Ken Source around here of Abigail Williams, Abigail Williams had just got off a tour with Dark Funeral and Enslaved. And that was 2006, like the tail end, like November, December, is like late 2006. And one of my best friends joined because they had a guitar player that quit like literally the first dates into the tour. A mutual friend called my friend, knowing like how incredible a guitar player he was, and he learned this set, in a day, I think, and they flew him down to Oklahoma, and he played the first show, maybe the second show. I think the guitar player played like one show with him or whatever, and bailed. And so he finished that tour with him, and then after that tour, things got hairy, and Abigail Williams officially broke up, actually. And so my best friend, being my best friend, called me up as Ken and him were still writing material. And he was like, hey, we got this new thing going. Abigail's pretty much done, but do you want to hear this stuff? I think you might be interested in trying out and like playing with us. And I'm a drummer by trade. I went to school for percussion in Los Angeles. So the project ended up being called Born of Fire. And long story short, we got signed to Roadrunner in 2008.
Holy shit.
So there's an album, well, not an album full, but there's quite a few songs that no one's really ever heard. I think Ken might have posted some like kind of like hidden on YouTube. If you search Born of Fire, I want to say Burning Bridges is out there. That was like the song that got us signed. And Mike Gitter was our A&R guy who signed like Opeth and Cradle and Killswitch and all them. So they courted us for a while. And it was funny because they'd been courting us as we had been writing. And, you know, it was always kind of like, hey, send us more material, write more. So literally we were always in the studio at that time, just writing and sending stuff. But Ken was still getting Abigail Williams tour offers. And so we were just talking to Gitter, and Gitter wasn't getting anywhere with like the powers that be, I guess. He was kind of at a stalemate with us. And he was like, well, look, they're not making a decision. You got these new cats you're playing with. Why don't you just go out on this Abigail stuff? You have these offers. Why don't you see if the band gels? Like, let's see how you guys work together. So if it comes to fruition, you at least know like you guys can like live together in a van. Like you've experienced that together. You bonded, you know, or you'll fall apart, you know, like, who doesn't fit, or, you know, it's like a trial marriage or something.
Which bands it's very important to do.
It is. So it was good advice. And so my first tour ever was not long not late into 2007. It was like quite early. So this all happened very fast, but was with Vader and Loveland Creation on the Death by Decibels tour in 2007.
Which is a huge lineup, yeah.
So it's cool first tour. Yeah, Cattle the Cap was on that as well.
Awesome. Let's touch on, as you mentioned, a lot of members get to a point where they can't be on the road anymore.
Yeah.
You got to that point, and then you took things to a different level, and you started a record label.
Yeah.
Let's touch on that whole point of your life when you couldn't be the guy out on the road, but you wanted to start dabbling in releasing music.
So at the time, I was actually already married. I got married like 2006, and obviously I joined Abigail the year after. And I had been auditioning for bands. I actually got a gig with Into Eternity,
Canadian boys
up in Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
So I was moving. Like I took out a loan to like move to Regina. Like it was crazy, man. But then I'm glad it happened in hindsight, because then I knew like this wasn't meant to be or whatever. But they did some sketchy things, and some things they promised me, they like reneged on like literally the week I was moving. And so I was like, dudes, I can't like change my life and come up here for that. And so I'm glad it happened before I got there.
Yeah.
Otherwise I would have been screwed. But I had to pay interest on this loan. I had just taken it out like a week or two ahead of time to like just be able to move. But Tim was going to have me, he owned like a taxi service. He was going to have me like drive for him and pay me under the table and like we, you know, whatever. He was accommodating, and then I don't know, just some things happened and things didn't work out. But then I found out some other things that weren't too savory about the way they handled business. So I'm kind of glad that didn't work out. Anyway, so I digress. So I'd been married. We had our first child in 2008. And I missed almost like the first year of her life being on the road, you know. And so I told the wife at the time, like, throw up the white flag whenever it becomes too much. Because at the time I'd be working like a few, you know, whatever jobs, one for my uncle and this other, this job at like this ice cream. I was like a manager at this ice cream spot.
I've scooped ice cream before.
There's some fun stories with that one. But, so yeah, I was doing whatever. And then like I'd save money and just give her money. So when I was gone, that she could pay bills when I was gone. And then it was just playing catch up when you get back, you know, kind of thing, which I'm sure a lot of people experience. But she got pregnant again. And so then it was time to figure out like, you know, it's going to get even rougher now, and I'm never around. So we got to figure this out. So this tour with Goat Whore was coming up. It was us and Goat Whore co-headlining. And then that band Doth, do you remember?
Of course.
DAA
Yeah.
On Roadrunner, they were support. And SWATs, do you remember SWATs?
That one I don't remember, no.
Successful Right Apocalypse Across the Sky. It was a nuclear blast band, I think. They were support. And there was like one more. So it was actually like kind of a cool lineup. And it was like going to be like our first bus tour, which was kind of exciting. But it was a Finberg tour. we had just kind of lost our booking agent before, which was like TKO, was like Ash and the Sumerian guys. And we wanted to change. We were kind of getting written off a little bit because they were doing so much of the gent and the core stuff, and we weren't really fitting in anymore. And so we went to Finberg, and it became this like competition. Finberg wanted to like one up these guys. Yeah, I mean, if you know John Finberg, you already, yeah, we won't go there, but he's an interesting personality, a character, and can be a little difficult to work with. So anyway,
he gets a lot of shit done, though.
He does get shit done. Yeah. I mean, Nightwish manager. I mean, he's accomplished a lot. So we kind of put this in his lap, and he was like dead set to like, I don't know, it was like a personal vendetta with TKO or something that he had to like overbook this thing. And so it went from like a normal kind of like, I don't know, 42 days, 45 days, something like that. And I was set to do it. I'm like, okay, this will be my last hurrah. I'll do this tour, and I'll step aside, you know. Well, Finberg kept booking. And if you know Finberg well, you know that he'll book you in the best places, but he'll book you in the shittiest places too. It's like no in between. It's like, I mean, well, everything and everything in between. So he would book anyone, any promoter that would take it. He would book it. So it ended up being like, I don't know, 78 days or something.
I've heard about this tour on other podcasts. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I've toured with some people that subsequently must have replaced you.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
And I've heard about this epically long tour. Ian, I think, who's now in Aborted now. Shout out to you. I love your brother. Yeah.
Ian's the homie.
I'm pretty sure he jumped on that tour. That was his first tour.
Yeah, I wasn't in the band there, but me and my best friend Mike, who brought me into the Born of Fire thing, we kind of exited around the same time. And I mean, it booked so far out. It was like 3 months out, and I knew I'd make like $1,200. So I was like, there's no way I can survive. So it like decided it for me, essentially.
A 70-day tour.
And so then, yeah, it was more, man. Yeah, it was long. And I started getting nervous. Ken would update me like by the day, and he's going, yeah, it's like 42 dates. I'm like, all right, cool. And then he'd be like, hey, it's 48. And I'd be like, okay, you can make that work. Then he's like, hey, it's 54. I'm like, Jesus, dude, what's going on? And then by the end, it was 70 something. I'm like, hey, dude, I just can't do this, man. And so, he was cool. He was understanding. But me and Ken were really close, like brother style. Like we had been together through some stuff, and he moved to Cleveland, so he was actually living with us. Like he stayed here for 2 years that we were in the band. The band was really based here. We were all here. So except Sam, who was in New York, New Jersey. So anyway, so that spawned the exit, and then I ended up getting divorced, and just life stuff, man. I had to figure out my life and like figure out what I wanted to do, and went back to school for a little bit. And amidst all this, I was like, I taught percussion for 8 years at like a private settlement. Any music type gig is what I was trying to do, just still make music my life. So I did live sound at a club, which you probably played at some point, Peabody's in Cleveland before it closed.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did live sound there. Actually, Ken did too when he was living here. And so I got into that when he was leaving. I had started doing sound there too. So, just a bunch of random music gigs to make, pay the bills or whatever. But I had to kind of reevaluate my life, man, and get my shit together. I was like just about 30 years old at that time. I kind of started late in the game.
It's almost like you're trying to discover who you are while still being a musician, like.
Right. And you have kids now that you're responsible for, and like that has to come first. And so it got to a point where actually I had a good friend who got a job with Eighth Day. I don't know if you're familiar with Eighth Day Sound.
No, not at all.
They do like Jay-Z, Madonna. I mean, like big sound company, like worldwide. They have offices everywhere, but one of their offices happens to be in like Cleveland suburb, which is kind of weird because they have like New York. We're like a Midwest hub, I guess. They have LA, they have UK. They may have something in Canada too. But they're huge. And so my friend got a gig, and he's like, dude, if you want in, like I can get you in. But I would never be home. And so I really had to make a decision right then and there, like, am I going to make music my life and like never see my kids, or do I be a part of my kids' life? And so I made the right choice. And cool thing was actually my ex was like, and we're real cool. So it was obviously when you split, there's always a bad things you got to get over. But I mean, we're like super cool today, and didn't take long for us to get cool, to be honest. But she had a day job, so I literally had my kids like all day during the week. So I was like the mom taking the kids to like library, reading story things. And so it was actually really like wonderful time, you know.
I had to took a sabbatical for a year.
Did you?
With my daughter, who was 2 years old at the time. It's my favorite year of my life.
Yeah. So I'm glad I did that.
Those little moments, you'll never get them again, you know?
Right, exactly. So that was a choice I made. And then I took a hiatus from everything because I was figuring out my life. And I just wanted to improve my life for the kids, for myself, you know. I was getting older, so I took a complete break. And anything metal related, I was almost like I couldn't even stomach it. Like, I feel like it had like almost like I'd been so obsessed and driven that it almost like was a bad drug type of experience. Like I was addicted. So I felt like...
Did you feel like you had failed?
No, I felt like I let it take over my life.
Okay.
Like I let like a drug or something, like abuse. Like I completely let music take over and like forget about... Obviously I got divorced. Like all these things happened, but it was because I was so focused and driven. Like everything came second for so long. So when I flipped the script, you know, it was probably 2 or 3 years of really not doing anything. I actually like played drums for some gigs, like a hip hop thing and like some folk thing. And like, just like I would stick my foot in the water just to do some different things and like not have it be so intense. And so, you know, just to have fun with it again, I guess.
I'll just take a few puffs of that weed.
Yeah, something like that. So, you know, and then when your life gets straightened out, you start reintroducing things that you love, right? Like things that you know I can manage this now, or you reintroduce this thing that meant something for so long, and you know the passion never went away. I just really had to focus, you know, and so I just dove back in like almost like nothing happened, and just like all of us, man. You dive down the rabbit hole. It's like, well, what did I miss? Like all these bands, there's so many great bands coming out, and just all this shit we did when we were 15, like finding the most extreme shit. And obviously this is a new age where everything's at your fingertips. So you can just dive forever. So discovering bands. And then because of my experiences, I had so many friends in the industry, you know, like I was friends with Mike Heller, who had obviously done stuff with System Divide, and he was at some Abigail sessions for some reason too. But he was touring with Fear Factory, and he still was doing Malignancy, and he was doing side projects with some of my other friends, and they wanted to release it, but they didn't know what to do, and they didn't really have any label support. So I was like, why don't I just try to release it, man? Like, let me see what I can do. You know, it's a challenge that I haven't tried yet. I haven't done anything on that side of the business. I've tour managed before, but I never like jumped on the label side. And so I just wanted to give it a shot. And so that's how we got there.
That's were you wary that you wouldn't be able to give this project what it needed?
Not really, because I am I'm a workaholic, man. I'm like super driven, super focused to the point of a fault. You know what I mean? Like sometimes things come second because I'm so focused. Like the job has to get done. Like I can't leave something if I'm working on it until it's like I got to know it's done. So it's not like I'm just not thinking about it, you know, forever. Like, let me get it done, and then I can check out and go be with the family or whatever, you know. So that's something I constantly am trying to work on. But I was confident in myself, man. I'm like, I know the business. This is what I know. Like, this has been metal's been my life forever as a fan. And then, like, the experiences that I learned being in Abigail and signing a major record deal and doing all these things that I had experienced in a short amount of time. And still having all these friends in the industry that I could reach out to. You know, I'm really good close friends with Dirk Verburen, who's now in Megadeth, and he was living in Cleveland at the time, so he was a close friend, and I had him to confide in and ask questions, and you know they can just lay it out for me, and so I started doing my own research. And in 2015, the climate at the time, it was interesting because you know having left for a while, you know when I was in Abigail, especially like right at the beginning in 2007 and the whole Roadrunner thing with Born of Fire, the industry was a mess.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It was...
Because the digital downloads were taking over. Yeah. Everyone was freaking out.
Yeah. When did you join Cryptopsy?
Right at that point, 2007.
Oh, yeah. So you know, man. So people were freaking out. Labels were freaking out. Roadrunner gave us like the worst deal ever, so it was kind of nice that they dropped us. But, well, it's so terrible. Everyone was afraid. Everyone was scared to, you know, that they weren't going to make money. They were afraid to spend money. They wanted to take all your money. So, yeah, just really bizarre timing. And by the time I came back, everything kind of started ironing out. And wasn't like great yet, but it was much better. Like 2015, there was tons of small labels everywhere that I didn't remember, wasn't aware of maybe. Like Dark Descent is one. I think they started in 2010, but I kind of checked out not long after that. Like 2010, 2011 is when I checked out. So I missed all that beginning stuff and just finding all these like little niche labels, whether they were focused on just stoner doom specifically, or Dark Descent like with just death and black metal. Unspeakable Acts was like, at first I thought it was owned by Matt too. I didn't know because they seemed very closely tied together, but it was like kind of this thrash vibe. And so I'm like, man, there's something to this. And these labels are growing quick. Like I never even heard of them. And like, it seems like they have all these followers, like they're getting all this attention. Their social media is blowing up. And, you know, I discovered the niche thing and I was like, okay, well, maybe there's something to that. And so the idea was, okay, I never want to be locked into confines necessarily, like as a person, as a musician, as a listener, because I do like everything. I went to school for music. I love Latin jazz. I love progressive music. I love some early hip hop. You know, like I really love everything. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll kind of test this whole theory. And so I started Redefining Darkness as literally my Dark Descent model. This was going to be the evil shit. This was going to be old school death metal, black metal. That's it. Like nothing else. And I stuck to that. And but I wanted another outlet. I wanted something where I could kind of spread my wings a little bit and just release good music that I like. And it was always going to be on the extreme fringes because that's just my personality. Like anything that I've listened to since I was a kid has been something on the outskirts, right? Even hip hop back in the early 90s, like that wasn't mainstream. There was nothing on the radio. Like it was a super underground movement. And so anything that I was into was extreme in its own way. And so I started seeing red, and it's funny because people ask me about Minor Threat and is that where it came from? But it was a combination of Minor Threat, Seeing Red, and also Entombed's song, Seeing Red. So that Seeing Red it was like my relapse model where, you know, over the years, obviously when we were coming up in the 90s, it was really extreme stuff. And, you know, obviously they signed Mastodon and some more, I wouldn't say mainstream, but I guess they never lost their focus of releasing whatever the fuck they wanted to is kind of the point there. And I wanted that too. And so I'd Redefining Darkness to really focus in on the stuff I truly love, because I do have a real passion for death and black metal, but I love all these other things too. And so why not just help the bands that I believe in and try to at least elevate them to wherever they're trying to go. So that's why the two labels, and that's kind of the reasoning behind it, you know.
Do they work hand in hand, or are they two completely separate?
So sometimes it even confuses me still, which is like the biggest struggle for me. I shouldn't like harp on it so much. If I just let them be, I'm sure it'd be fine. But, you know, the question comes up a lot. And a lot of people don't even know that Seeing Red exists, or vice versa. Like if I have fans of Seeing Red artists, like they don't know about Redefining. So
I know of it just because it was in your email tag. And then,
right.
And I went and checked it out further from there, yeah.
Right. So, again, Redefining the evil shit. I just like to keep it simple. If people remember that, it's easy. And then Seeing Red. You know, I've released post-punk. I've released grindcore, thrash. There's mostly thrash, and I would say like stoner doom sludge. But there is grind. There is like D-beat kind of power violence. And then I released a band that sounds like My Bloody Valentine. Again, like anything that I like, you know, it's kind of that platform for that. So when I kind of had to put it together, the business plan portion, I was like, well, how do I do this? Like, I've never ran a business of my own before, really. And if I want to make it legitimate, like, what's the best tactic here? So I decided to do Redefining Darkness LLC. That's my LLC. And Seeing Red's just a subsidiary of that. So it really lives under that Redefining Darkness, like, tag, like, from, like, an accounting perspective, I guess. But it is its own entity, and they do operate very separately. I rarely, like, cross anything ever.
It's very liberating for you, too, though.
Yeah.
I don't know if you felt trapped at first, and that's why you were like, fuck it, I'm just going to start another one.
Not really. I mean, I did it at the same time. Like, it's funny that we're talking now because, like, right now, like, this month, I think the 17th of May is my 5-year anniversary. I started in 2015.
Congrats.
Yeah. Well, I think with the Corona thing, it kind of sideswiped all of us. But I wanted to do something special for the 5-year, and I haven't really gotten to it yet. So hopefully maybe by I don't know, I only got a week, I guess.
Well, no, it's 5 years for the whole year.
Okay, there you go. I'm going to use that.
It's like
I'm
bands. We do our 25th anniversary, not for the day of it. We do the year of it.
Right. I'll stick with that. But yeah, it would be cool to do something. But yeah, I started them at the same time, man, because I knew myself enough to know that, like, well, I love all this, the dark stuff. There's going to be other things that because there was already bands that my friends were doing that I know I wanted to work with that fitting that mold, and so I just launched them at the same time, essentially.
What is the ratio between that? Like, you're just putting out your friends' music to people sending you stuff and you discovering new bands. What is like the ratio of that?
Well, obviously that's changed over the years, but at first the way it started is, I think, like how a lot of labels start. I think they, just reading some stories about label origins. It's kind of a similar story of like guys that had friends that were in bands that couldn't get signed or whatever, and they're like, well, fuck it, I'll release it for you. And so my story is no different. I thought I might get a jump start only because a lot of my friends were in active bands that were kind of known, or they had been in bands that were known and now doing something new and different. And I realized very quickly that doesn't necessarily matter. Like this whole named thing, where I thought like, oh yeah, we can build off their name, and it doesn't really.
Well, they'd have to be really active on social media.
Yeah,
which a lot of people are artists, and artists tend to not be very good at social media.
Yeah, and at the time, like, people get it now, but MySpace had just died really, and Facebook was this new thing, and yeah, a lot of these guys are like, well, I don't know what I'm doing. They didn't take it serious. They're like talking to girls and stuff. Yeah, let me hook up with this chick, and they were using it for much different things. They weren't business minded, So yeah, so the ratio now, I mean, it's funny. I get hit up a lot. We get a lot of submissions, and it's probably like 1 in 50 that like I go, oh shit, like this is really good. I do try to check out everything that comes in, even if it's like a snippet. I try to give it like the 20-second test. That's not fair either. I try to like listen to something in the background while I'm working sometimes, but I know pretty quickly whether it's like not my thing, or maybe it's not up to like a standard that I'm trying to hold. And not to discourage anyone, because if you have like a lo-fi recording or so, I'm not judging that kind of thing, but you can tell when like the music's just not there yet or whatever. So usually I could judge pretty quickly, and I want to have that oh shit moment of like being blown away too, and those come pretty naturally, but sometimes things take a little while to digest. So I try to give it a little time, but I do at least play little snippets here and check out a few tracks and go through. But I can't get to everyone all the time. And I used to feel really bad because I never wanted to be that guy that like didn't respond to people. But it's almost like, oh, we'll respond if we're interested kind of thing. And so I do try to always answer in some way or give some kind of rejection. Because we've all kind of been there. We've all submitted something at some point or another. And that just like leaving it in the dark and not knowing, most people would just rather know like, hey, we're going to pass on this, man. Thanks for sharing. But, good luck to you. It's not for us, or we're not signing anyone right now. I'd rather have the rejection, I think, personally. And so I try to be thoughtful and conscious of that with others.
Which is good because it gives them closure. A lot of people might just throw it out there and then be waiting and hoping. Who knows? Right. And maybe they didn't submit to someone else because they really want to be on Redefining Darkness.
Did they get it? Did they get the mail? I need to send it again.
They're calling the postal service.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, not so much physical mail, which is kind of nice. So it is a lot of like, and because there's so much social media, it's like Facebook getting up there, getting up on Instagram, email. So it's like everywhere. You get bombarded, but it's cool, man. It's just part of the gig. So
what would be, if you had advice for a band that wanted to be on Redefining Darkness Records or on Seeing Red, what would be the criteria that you would expect from them?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I don't know that there's anything specific other than, have integrity, do it for you. If the music's good, it speaks for itself, really, because everything else could be taught, like as long as, I guess the band has to not be stubborn. They have to be really open and willing to accept a mentor, because sometimes I probably overstep my bounds, but I almost get into a management type role with some of these younger bands because I'm just trying to mentor them or trying to educate them. And I'm sure you've experienced stuff that's similar, but there's a lot of stuff that I saw that I wasn't a fan of on the industry side when I was the artist. And so that was another reason for starting the labels, was like, I want to be a like true and fair partner to these people. You know, as an example that you could probably even relate to, and I don't know what your agreements are, but when I was in Abigail, Candlelight charged us like, I mean, it was like rough wholesale for our CDs, like $7 a piece or something.
Yeah, it's pretty bullshit.
Yeah, and we're like, what? We're making $3 a CD. We have to have them. Yeah, we're making shit already on the road. Our guarantees at the time were shit. It's like, we have merch, that's great, but I mean, you know, it's really making it difficult, you know. And so, like, I try to make really fair costs, and you know, like, I just try to, like, all the issues that I had, I try to look out for bands, and I'm never trying to own publishing. Like, I don't want any of that shit. Like, I want them to own their own masters. I want them to own their own artwork, their own recordings, so that, like, when our agreement's over, which most of the time is a handshake. I do have contracts out there, but I try not to, because I just want to work on a case by case and album by album basis. I never want to stick anyone or have anyone feel stuck in a situation they don't want to be in. If they don't want to be in it, it's cool, man. We had our time together. Hopefully there was some positive there, and you know, feel free to move on, kind of thing. And luckily, I haven't had many, really no bad situations. So, you know, I just try to do right by everyone and really be a partner rather than, I don't know, the traditional label situations. More, it feels like more like a parent-child situation, you know, like asking permission or like, yeah, I don't know. Not all situations are like that. I know that, but still, you know, I don't want anyone to feel locked in or confined or. So anyway, so yeah, I tend to try to be a guide if bands are willing. So the one thing, you know, getting back to your point or your question, is just be open, you know, be open to learning, pushing yourself. I like hard workers, man, like guys that'll just do whatever they need to do to get things done. You know, I'll give advice wherever, man. Like I'll try to help you with social media posts and like how you can be more effective, and like whatever you need, I'm like literally there for. And it's just me. I don't have a staff. So think about all the bands I work with, and I'll be there for all of them, man. Like I do that. And it's the ones that are open to this stuff and are pushing that like are the most successful. Like if the label and the band are working together towards the same goal, it's a million times more effective than if like a label's doing everything and the band's just kind of expecting things to happen, or vice versa. There's some labels that don't do shit and just put it out, and the band's going crazy and doing all these posts and their social media is crushing, but the label just literally released it and there's no promo and there's no nothing, you know? And so like, I try to encourage my bands to be as active as they can, because I can't do everything for them. They need to invest in themselves and really like do everything they can as a band. So I would say, you know, the music speaks for itself. Just be truly passionate about what you do, be open and willing to work. And that's really it, man. Like, I don't care about like, you got to have some professional recording and you got to do it. Like, fuck that. Like that comes with time. Like we'll get there, but if the music's there, that's number one. Personality's the next one, and having the right mesh of people, I think. That's
awesome. You become essentially like an extra band member almost.
Yeah. And again, I never want to force that on anyone either, so I try to be thoughtful of that. But, you know, again, I've never had problems. I try to be respectful of everything. And sometimes, you know, I'm getting bombarded sometimes by many bands, and I have a day job and I have a wife and kids, so sometimes some things happen that definitely are annoying, and I'm probably pretty direct sometimes, and not in an asshole way, but just direct. And you know, I hope it comes across right, but you know, I'm just trying to like get to the point so we don't have to dance around things, and it's just like, hey, dude, I think, you know, here's my opinion or whatever, and you know, take it or leave it. But if we need a discussion, let's have the discussion, and if not, here's my thoughts or whatever. So I just don't like to beat around the bush, you know.
Which is good. There's no point in wasting time, and I hope they respect and appreciate your input.
So far, so good. No one's bitched me out or anything. So,
do you feel, as you mentioned with 2007, the labels were struggling, really trying to figure out how they can make money the way they used to prior to the whole digital world? Now you mentioned that when you started it up 5 years ago, it was coming back. Do you feel like what's been happening with COVID will have an impact on the record industry?
It's a good question. It's funny how everything's worked out, because in 2007, when everyone was freaking out on the industry side, they just didn't know if they would even exist as a business anymore. A lot of them, like really, they were all scared. So it's funny how everything turned around with streaming, and, labels are making more money on digital than they ever did, so it's kind of interesting. Yeah, it's free money, man. So, and granted, I will say, like, unless you're really pulling in the numbers, like, there's not much money to be there. But when you're a label and you have like 50 bands on a roster, that all adds up quickly, So, so it's definitely a benefit. You would hope that labels are putting their money where their mouth is, and like hopefully extending some recording budgets or anything to help tour support, whatever, if they're generating this extra income. I don't know if that's true or not, because I'm not obviously dealing with them anymore, but I'd want to know where all that revenue is going. So anyway, so with the COVID thing, it's, I'm in it, and me being like small, essentially DIY style, I mean, it really hasn't affected us, man. I thought it would. I really did. But I think with the Trump money, and I know you guys got some money, right? I think, there's a lot of idiots out there, and I hate to say that, but, this is money to, like, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, it's been given to you, and you don't know what the fuck's going to happen. So hopefully you're using it for the right things. But I think a lot of it, a lot of guys are young or whatever, and they're record collectors, and, they're out of their minds, and they just don't care. They're like, sweet, I got $1,500, whatever, I'm going to buy a shit ton of records, So while I appreciate that, it might not be the smartest move, but that's what's been happening, man. And it's funny, I work like really closely with Hell's Headbangers, and they said it's been the busiest time like ever for them, like busier than like Christmas.
Well, that's good. Everyone's home, right?
It's true, man. So I think it's actually increased everyone's business, to be honest.
Wow. Okay. Cool. That's good to know. Because I've been hearing about people pushing releases back on the bigger industry scale.
Yeah, I can comment on that. So I think where that's coming from, number one, is kind of the mystery of like, how's promotion going to be? They can't support it on the road. No one's touring. How is this band going to like sustain this or extend this, to where, I mean, touring is just a form of promotion. If you're out on the road all the time, you're playing in front of all these people, like it's a huge piece of it. So I'm sure that's a huge part of it. The other part of it, at the beginning at least, was air freight skyrocketed. All freight, really. And so when you're manufacturing in places like GZ, which that's where I manufacture all our vinyl and whatever, I do it through a broker through the Czech Republic, which is like, for people that don't know, and I guess that aren't tied into the industry in that way, it's pretty much the biggest pressing plant that I'm aware of. The whole city in the Czech Republic like works at this plant. It's like a thing. So obviously air freight's a thing. It like quadrupled. And so there was like no way I was doing any vinyl ordering at that time at the beginning. So I pushed a few things. So, I think it was a combination of a couple things. Like, do they really want to invest this money where they don't know what's going to happen and they don't know how promotion's going to be outside of their normal vehicles? Like touring's a huge one, especially for the bigger labels. They expect that kind of thing. So I think that's where it comes from. I think it was some financial things with some of the lockdown stuff, and even shipping. We didn't know, like, who could we ship to? Like, our country's accepting, and some did shut down. Like, I think Luxembourg I couldn't ship to, and there was another Eastern European, Estonia. Both of those, like, I had some customers.
That's true. We got an order from that, and we
did you get it right back?
We had to hold it back. Yeah.
Yeah. So the cool thing is, I use DHL Global, but pretty much it goes in and they spit it right back out. So it never even goes anywhere, really. It might go to their processing in the States and then comes right back. So, we I guess lose a little money in postage when we refund, but at least it didn't try to make it or get stuck in customs somewhere and lost or whatever, because that would be a nightmare. So that was another thing too. Like, we didn't know what shipping was, what was going to happen. Like, is everything going to fall apart? Are they going to shut down like the post office? So there was a lot of scares at the beginning. But I think now, people are going to loosen up, and it's funny because there's like, it's a dead month. Like, nothing has really come out in May, and I can see it, dude. Like, I'm starting to get like all these like releases are starting to pile up, and I'm like, fuck, I gotta like organize this so it's not a chaotic mess, and everyone's going to be fighting for promotion from all the sites at the same time. So, I just got to hope for my band's sake, that the bands I represent, that I'm still able to do my normal promo and not lose any of it competing with all these other labels, because I think we're going to see a lot of releases in June and July. Just people starting to get back to it. So
well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear, because I love new music. Let's dance in one last topic, the Into the Darkness, your podcast. I absolutely loved. I have to say, you beat me to it. I wanted to interview all Cryptopsy singers individually, which I did.
Yeah.
I got Martin Lacroix last year, and then for my 1-year anniversary party, I interviewed Lord Worm.
I listened to that one.
He's amazing, of course.
That was a great one.
And then I finally hooked up with Mike DeSalvo, and we shut down St. Buck, drinking far too late into the morning.
I listened to that one too. Yep.
And then I wanted to do a round table with all 4 of us.
That would be amazing. You should still do that.
I'm going to, but but you just released an epic chat where it was Lord Worm and Mike DeSalvo, and I listened to it. I loved it. It was amazing. So take me through. Into the Darkness is something that started a while back, but you have picked it back up.
Yeah. I started around the same time as the labels. I think actually right before launching the labels, I started the podcast. And like literally around the same time, I might have done like one interview, and I think it was for like a site. I want to say it was for, if you listen to an early interview with Gregor McIntosh from Paradise Lost, and it was for a site in the UK that I had been like doing some reviews for here and there. Because that's how I started getting back into shit, was I started doing reviews. And so I started getting all this new music and was deep diving and stuff. And then the label thing made sense even more with the friends, like everything added up. But the reviews were cool, and then they asked me to do an interview, and I'm like, man, I'm like a huge Paradise Lost fan. The Gregor thing was like, a dream come true, sort of, and I did it, and I loved it. We just kind of bullshitted, and like, man, there's something to this. This would be really cool to do. And at that time, I feel like, I mean, maybe I'm ignorant, but podcasts weren't really like a thing yet. They weren't really like big, and not a lot of metal ones for sure. So I'd like to think I was on some cutting edge thing there, but I didn't know anything either. Like, I didn't know RSS feed. I didn't, everything was kind of newer, So kind of had to figure some things out. But yeah, started Into the Darkness. Got the logo made from my dude Chris Horst. That was like, dude, do something like Grave. It looks just like Grave. And I even like kind of jacked a Grave intro, like because I literally took Into the Darkness from the song Into the Grave. It's Into the Darkness, Into the Grave, right? The lyrics. So that's where I got it, and it tied in with Redefining Darkness, right? And so I'm like, sweet, this could be a vehicle to just, get more people to maybe hopefully check out the label, but have fun in doing it at the same time. And so I started looking at my friends in the industry that, was just reaching out to friends first, like, who can I interview that people might be interested in? So James Murphy was like my first official one. Gregor, like I said, was before that, but like it wasn't initially for Into the Darkness. I just kind of tossed it in there because it made sense. But so we did James Murphy, and that dude's like me. He can talk, man, and he doesn't stop. So that was really great. And he went through stuff that I never even knew. And I've like stayed with this guy at his house and stuff. Like I never knew a lot of this stuff. So it was really cool, especially if you're an old, Florida death metal guy, head like me. And then Trevor, I've obviously known Trevor for a while. Just acquaintances though. Like I didn't know him. But he's obviously been a torchbearer for the underground, and people might rag on his band as far as like the elite circles of people that I know. Because we're older. Like Black Dahlia's not like cool enough or not. They're too new. You know what I mean? Like we didn't listen to him growing up, so it's not. It's not
true.
Cool,
it's not true.
But actually, it's funny because over the years, some of the elite guys I know, they're like, "Oh yeah, check that out. It's actually pretty good. It's just like melodic death metal." I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, they do a good job." So they have been given props by some of the elitists I know. So that's all over with. But yeah, he's a funny guy, hilarious, obviously, and I'm like, man, he would be great to have on. And they had an album coming out, so it was relevant. And then it died because I was really focused on the labels, and I was like, I can't do everything. I'm just trying to figure this thing out. And so over the years, I befriended the guys at Hell's Headbangers, and they actually handle all of my fulfillment. So they handle my inventory, they handle my packaging, my shipping. So when you order from me, it actually goes through Hell's.
I was wondering if you were doing it while you were sleeping.
Yeah. So I'm still there. I still got to whether it's a wholesale order, somebody got a drop ship or just even dropping off new releases, I still have stuff shipped to my house and I'll bring it over. And I'm literally like a employee there. I feel like it's kind of weird, like a partner in some way. But they're great guys. You know, unfortunately, I think they get a bad rap sometimes, but there's nothing to any of that. They're solid dudes who've been doing it for a long time. And Craig, who is like Reaper on Reaper Metal Productions and Into the Darkness with me. Hell's Headbangers is owned by three brothers, really. And Craig's the youngest of those brothers, so he doesn't have ownership, but he worked for them. And he was kind of the jack of all trades at the warehouse. Like anything they needed, he'd handle like receiving. But if there's ever anything that came up, he'd be the guy that everyone turned to handle the situation. And he was a tech guy and all that. So we befriended each other. He's the one that kind of brought me in and hooked me up with the fulfillment thing, which was a blessing because if any of you dealt with shipping ever, like shipping a CD to Germany is like $13. And
it's the bane of my existence. I like giving stuff to my podcast, my Vox&Hops heads. I'm always excited when I sell something, but when ship day comes in, I'm in the worst mood sitting on my computer. It pisses me off to no ends.
Well, you know, it sucks for the customer too, because they're buying a shirt or they're buying a CD or whatever, and it's like, you know, it's 10 or 12 bucks, and they got to pay another 10, 12 bucks shipping, and it's like, is a CD really worth 25 bucks? Like, so I struggle with that at the beginning too, man. Thank God for Hells, because without them, I definitely wouldn't have grown the way I have. My international fan base is really strong because I can ship at least equivalent internationally as I do domestic. Like,
oh, cool.
$5, whatever, you know.
Cool.
Japan, cool. Australia, cool. Yeah, so it's just a volume-based deal like any other thing in industry. The more you deal with, the more you ship, the cheaper the rates come down. So it works out. So anyway, back to the Into the Darkness thing. Craig or Reaper, he does Hellcast, and he's been doing Hellcast forever. And you know, I started doing some things with him, and I was like, he used to do some interviews. I was like, well, hey, what do you think about, you know, if I was ever able to get anyone, like, would you be interested? And he's like, sure. So we did a Glenn Benton thing together, which was actually really hilarious. And we had a really good time, and people were receptive, and it grew really quickly. And it took us a while to come back around to it. We always had intended to kind of jump on something like that at a more regular basis, but it took till COVID to really have the time, you know? None of us had the time. And so when this happened, I'm like, dude, we should get back to this. Like, people are just sitting around, like, YouTube's plays have spiked like crazy. Like, let's give some people, like, let's do some fun things together, but let's also give some people some cool shit to watch. And so we weren't going to call it Into the Darkness at all. Like, we were just going to do our own thing. And when we were kind of trying to figure out an entity, it kind of got brought up, and Craig's like, that's perfect, dude. Let's just use that. Like, you already kind of have this. It'll be like a channel or a series within the Reaper Metal family now, and you can put it on YouTube, and I kind of handle all the streaming parts. So he does the video, and I do that. So yeah, that's how it happened. And I wanted to talk to you about the Cryptopsy thing because it was the biggest challenge we ever had. So we have this like little kind of janky setup. It's pretty cool, but you know, it's not like the most professional setup at Reaper Metal Studios, which is like a little office room at Hell's Headbangers. It's pretty tiny, but we made it look like a cool like bedroom, kind of like shit all over the walls. You know, just trying to capture a vibe. You know, we don't have any fancy like budget or anything to put into it, just DIY it. But he's got a mixing board, and we try to do everything as pro as we can, and you know. We're using OBS to film and do all these things, right? Well, there's a lot of technical hiccups that happen, but when we've never tried to do two people at once, like, so the fact that Lord Worm obviously is technologically challenged, which I'm sure you know. He's got a flip phone, I think, still.
Yes.
So it was actually a good thing because we weren't sure how to get double video. Like, originally he was going to go over to Mike's and like have them together, but with COVID, obviously everyone's keeping separation, so that wasn't going to work. But when we found out Wormy was going to be on the phone, we're like, well, good, we can get him on a phone line. I'll put him on my phone and plug him in a channel that way through my phone, and we'll get Mike on video. Perfect, you know. But it wasn't that easy because then Mike and him couldn't hear each other. So literally we didn't know what to do. And then we had some issues with some processing. There was just a lot going on, and we have all these cut screens we make to make it so it's like me next to him and like Reaper next to him, and then so we have a worm one, a DeSalvo one, a group shot. So all these cuts, like 8 to 10 different cut screens. So you don't think about it when you're watching it, but there's a lot of shit that's going down, right? So I knew you'd appreciate this, so that's why I wanted to dive deeper. But so Craig was kind of cursing at me about it the whole time, and on the fly, though, I figured out, well, everyone's coming through my headphones, so I'm just going to put my headphones up to the phone where Worm is so he can hear Mike talk. So literally, anytime Mike talked, I'm like this. So eventually, they were able to hear.
I realized it because they started like bouncing off what they were saying.
And that's what we wanted originally. But at the beginning, when we first got into the show, we're like, oh, shit. Like, we didn't think about how this was going to work. Like, they're not going to be able to hear each other. So, yeah, it was like just spur of the moment, like, this is what we got to do, you know?
That's great.
So.
Yeah. It was a great interview. It's good to hear them talk about the old days with Cryptopsy.
Well, I'm glad it came off well, because what we had to do to make it work, we were so worried about like just making it work that I think we got sidetracked and not as engaged as we wanted to be, you know, as we would like to have been. And because, you know, when you're doing this, you just want to have the conversation. You don't have to think about all these other things. So at the beginning, we were definitely like, oh shit, like scrambling.
Totally off your game. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it worked out.
Is something Into the Darkness something that you're going to continue once COVID not dies down, but we get more freedom and people are more busy, or are you going to have to put it back on the back burner?
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I've obviously paid more attention to your podcast when Mike originally got on, and then I started going through and listening to a bunch of different ones and the Worm one, and I'm like, man, you crank them out. And I guess it's a little easier because it's just you and the way you're able to upload them and stuff, and you're not doing the whole YouTube thing. At least I'm not sure if you are. So I was just like so impressed with like how much you get done. Like I feel like you have multiple a week. I'm like, how does he keep up? And he's got kids and he's got a family. Like, so cheers to you on that. I don't know how you do it. And even just finding enough interesting guests, I feel like sometimes is like pulling out hair, like who could we get? Who do we want to get? And the fact that you do it all on your own, you know, thanks for doing this. I think it's a great thing for fans of metal, and hopefully more people will be tuning in and checking you out as you move forward. But having done it myself now too, I'm just like, I just don't know how you push it that far. I guess maybe if I didn't have the labels, it'd be a different story, but you're definitely pushing the boundaries of extremity when it comes to podcasts. So
thank you.
But yeah, we'll try. Obviously, it's easier now because even my day job, you know, it's like part work from home, part out in the field kind of thing, and so I have a little free time here and there, and I try to just kind of fit it in when we can. And I do all the scheduling, so I literally just like schedule it around my timeline and the guest timeline. I think the mentality we're using is like to treat it like series. So if we need to stop at any point, it's like, okay, this was like a season 2 or something. Season 1 was kind of the old stuff when I was doing it on my own. Whenever season 2 ends, we don't really have a limitation to that. It could be 10 episodes, could be 20, whatever. It'll probably be whenever we have to like stop and reset, you know, because right now we're able to keep this like weekly thing going, but I know that's not going to be possible forever. So, you know, just keep it interesting, keep cool guests that we're intrigued to talk to, and hopefully other people want to hear it too. But it's just as much for us as them, you know. It's always cool to learn and meet new people or learn stuff about bands that you've loved forever. Yeah, a lot of cool things come from this. You've
had a really amazing guest. All your guests have been awesome. But if you had a dream guest, who would that be?
It's hard to say because I've been fortunate to probably like yourself, man. I don't see you struggling to find anyone you want to talk to. You know what I mean? I feel like you got everyone under the sun. You know, I feel like no one's off limits, man. You know, David Vincent's one that's been on my target list for a while. He actually just turned it down. I guess he's not doing anything right now, but I did connect with him. I don't know if he's like a dream one. It's difficult because Into the Darkness is focused at least like in the kind of extreme realm, because obviously like someone big like I don't know, Metallica or someone like that, or a Danzig, I don't know, would just be interesting, even though I don't care as much these days. But to like maybe ask the questions like, no one asks. That's what we kind of try to do. We model ourselves after the Joe Rogan podcast. Like, we want this metal kind of think tank, just us talking. I mean, with Joe Rogan, I don't know if you ever listen, but like, I never know half the guests he has on, but I'll listen to it and be like, man, this is super interesting. Like, I would have never listened to this just based on the guy, but because of the conversations they have and how deep he dives, that's kind of like the basis of our whole thing. It's like, let's dive deep. Let's not ask like, how's the tour going type questions, like, and you're the same way, but I think we just take it to like, we just never press stop until either like they got to go or we're done. Some of these are like 2 hours. So we do have chapters now, by the way, people. So you don't have to listen to all 2 hours. It's like,
cool. That's smart.
Yeah, the Cryptopsy one I think I'm not caught up on because it does take time. You have to listen to the whole goddamn thing. But I have included chapters. So the old ones should all be up to date. Cryptopsy should be done soon. But Chris Barnes would be an interesting one because we kind of rag on him, and it's just because he was godly, right? He was godly when he was doing it with Cannibal Corpse, and like none of us know what happened, and it's like, is it just me that sounds like a dog, or is it like, do you guys think like he's regressed? Like, what happened? So not to we never want it to be a negative thing, and so it's like trying to like balance being interesting and not trying to like play on any negativity to like get views or anything. I never want to do that, but there is things that we think about as fans. I mean, that we go, I wonder what the story is there. Maybe he had throat surgery. Maybe we don't know. Like, who knows?
That's true.
So like that would be an interesting one. And to be honest, I kind of want to interview Phil from Malevolent Creation, who I know, and he's like really intense. And I wouldn't want to do it for the fact, like, I don't know what the hell he's going to say, because he could say some wild shit. But he would be like an intriguing guest, man. Like, I know he would have no filter. And that's like Glenn. Like, Glenn was my favorite because it was just fun. Like, and he's like a funny guy. Billy Milano would be great because I think he's like a guy with no filter. I just want people to be real and not conscious or, I hope. It's funny because I'm sure you get this too, dude. But look, as you talk to people, you can feel them like start to open up.
Yes.
And like just be comfortable.
It's because everyone has like their interview face.
Right.
But with a podcast, you break that down, and they somehow trust you.
Yeah.
Well, they forget.
Like quickly.
They forget. I normally always I always have like a spicy question or something, and I drop it around. Yeah. 18, 20 minutes into an interview, because that's when I feel people put their guard down a little bit.
It's true, dude. It happens, and you can feel it happen. You're like, all right, now I can ask this question. And
but
again,
you always
we
have
never
to
want
have a nice, soft question in your mind to follow that one up.
Yeah, right. Ease the blow. I mean, there was stuff with Glenn that we wanted to ask that obviously, we had actually talked pre-going in, and he had kind of asked us like not to ask certain things. But he divulged stuff to us off air, which was cool. And we talked after the interview too. He kept going with stuff, and he opened up about it on his own. Like, we didn't even have to ask him, but we kept it off air. We kept it respectful. And,
you have to.
And we still got some cool answers for ourselves that we know now, and because we were fans and we were just curious, and it was cool enough for him to even open up about it to us. So it's just cool to hear, dude. Like the Cryptopsy stuff. Like, I didn't know about that infamous show where DeSalvo killed Lord Worm, and like that's so fucking cool, Like, who wouldn't want to hear this stuff,
Or him sleeping in the coffin.
Have you slept in the coffin?
I have not slept in the coffin, no, but
they own the coffin still, right?
It was in the jam room. I don't know where it went. We had this awesome jam room in Cité 2000, which I talk about a lot on the podcast. It's so important to the Montreal metal scene. When it got cleaned out, I don't know where it went.
Oh, man.
It must be at Flo's house, maybe, but I doubt Flo kept the coffin in his house, to be honest.
Well, it becomes like a... you can't have it around kids, man. Yeah. The coffin fell on them. I don't know, we're the same age, right? Are you, I'll be 39 this year.
I'm turning 37 this year, yeah.
Okay, close. I don't know if you remember 1984, maybe it was just a U.S. thing or maybe it was a Cleveland thing. We called it Fridge Core 84. And it's because kids were literally dying in refrigerators because they were like hiding in them outside.
Oh, I've heard about it, yeah. You got to take the door off, yeah.
Got to take the door off, dude. And so I think of that with the coffin, like, kids like, what's this? Gets in, and, could be a bad thing.
Oh, that's awesome. Thomas, thank you so much for taking the time.
Cheers, man.
Sharing a drink with me, talking about a lot of great stuff. Everybody, go support Redefining Darkness Records.
Seeing Red Records. Go listen to Into the Darkness podcast. Lots of great stuff there, and it's been an absolute pleasure. So cheers. Thank you so much.
Cheers, brother. Thanks for the opportunity, and I'll be a follower till the day I can't be. So
cheers. Thank you.
Cheers, man.
Hey, thank you all so much for listening right to the end. You know that I love and appreciate that. Thomas, such a cool dude. I sincerely enjoyed this conversation. I liked his vibe. Thomas is an excellent human, and he's doing such great things with the Redefining Darkness and Seeing Red Records. Check them out, follow them, support them. Use that 15% promo code for Redefining Darkness Bandcamp page. That's Vox&Hops. That is VOX&HOPS. You get 15% off of all vinyl, CDs, and cassettes. Do it. Support extreme music. Thank you, Thomas. I appreciate your support. And please keep supporting extreme underground music. I love it to death. I hope you guys have a great rest of the week. I have one more episode coming at you on Friday, but until then, remember to enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. Cheers, Vox&Hops.